Nehemiah, as he looked over the devastation of what had just happened, those long 70 years, destruction and doom and disobedience, God spoke to him. And he asked him to go back and to see that the walls around Jerusalem would be rebuilt for God's glory. And God honored that step of faith in his life. The Lord began to work in a powerful way of giving him a voice with the king and providing open doors that he might be able to walk through. And when he came back to report to the people, he made this soul-stirring statement in Nehemiah 2 and verse number 18. Then I told them of the hand of my God. You know, a testimony exalts the work of our great God. The Lord is working among us, and we're careful to give him the praise for what he's doing. I love the text in Acts 14:27. And when they were come and had gathered the church together, they rehearsed all that God had done with them. And isn't that what's going on in our lives? God is working with us. When we set out to go to Maine in 1994 and went about a year and a half of deputation and then moved there in January of 96, I would recommend if you're moving to New England that maybe you could pray about moving in January. I don't know that that was the wisest thing I've ever done, but it does make for exciting stories along the way. But when we endeavored to go, we asked God to do several things in our life. My prayer ground was at my home church in Canton, North Carolina, and I would run to the church in the mornings and there meet with God. And I said, Lord, you made Mainers. We that are not from there are called maniacs. The people there are called Manas. I said, you made them. Would you just tell me how to win them to Christ? Amen. And I said, it will make everything so much easier. And I remember that morning as I was meeting with God, God simply gave me some biblical principles to guide our mission endeavor and to guide these last 20 years. He simply said this to me: charity never faileth. Amen. He said, love people. And that's what we've been endeavoring to do these last 20 years. Just love people. I marvel at how we try to get people without Christ cleaned up before they get saved. That is so contradictory to the Scriptures. The same Spirit of God that has sanctified us and continues his progressive work of sanctification in our life is the same Holy Spirit that will work in those that come to Christ. He said, charity never faileth. And then he said to me this. He said, what did the crowd accuse me of? And I said, well, Lord, they accused you of being a friend of sinners. And he said, that's who I am. And he said, that's what you ought to be. And so for these years, we've been simply doing our best by God's grace to be a friend of sinners. And I marvel at the conversions that have come these last 20 years, and we could tell of them. And I remember one of the first individuals we led to Christ. I was looking out my back window and I saw one of my neighbors. He was chopping his wood. By the way, you chop a lot of wood in Maine. Last year, the Crown College Quartet, we chopped 33 cords of wood. That's 4 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet long, 33 of those. And it was a great blessing, especially for me. We've done that. The Crown College Quartet have done that every year for many years. Now I'm indebted to them. No, none of them, no. They all just quit the singing group. He chopped a lot of wood. I looked out there and I went out to my backyard neighbor. I had my green Dickie work pants on and a flannel shirt, a pair of leather gloves, and I walked out and I kind of jumped the guy a little bit, and he turned around and he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I heard there was a new priest in town." And I said, "Start the wood splitter back up. We're splitting wood today." He said, "No, we're not splitting wood today." He said, "I've never known a priest that would work." I said, "Well, you've met another one. And I believe in work." I said, "Start the wood splitter back up. We're coming to chop wood." And he said, "I'm not starting it up." He said, "I'm a sports fan, and I've been noticing all my life something at sports venues." And he said, "I've been waiting my whole life to ask a priest what it meant. And I've never been able to ask one, and now's my time. And I want to know on those cardboard signs what JO 316 stands for. Can you explain that to me? And you tell me soul winning is boring. Soul winning is not boring. 45 minutes later, I had preached Christ to him. And 3 weeks later, he walked the aisle and was gloriously saved. The conversions that come when you take that step of faith, and when you look out over a city of destruction, you then can say, "Then I told them of the hand of my God." And then out of conversions come churches that are established. God is, in his great grace, has allowed us to see 2 mother churches started, then 5 other daughter churches started. We're headed back to see the 8th one started. And we're going on, and we're going after it. And then the continuous blessings there are. There's joy in serving Jesus. It's thrilling. It's wonderful to be able to get up in the mornings and to meet with God, and then to get out into the vineyards of the Lord and to see people come to Christ and families put back together. Only God could do that. And how grateful we are for his blessings. There was a guy come to my house one day to do plumbing for me. He got out of his vehicle, and he was terrifying looking. He had a guy with him from Norway that was 6'4" or 5", weighed 300 pounds, and there wasn't an ounce of fat on him. He was huge. Amy looked out the blinds and she said, "Who are these people? Should we lock the doors?" And I said, "They're the plumbers. They've come to work on our house. We should let them in and talk to them about Christ." And we did, and found out that they were in a biker club, and found out later that he would come and do the plumbing at our church. And our friend and many of you that have come have stayed in their home as they've opened it up to the college quartet year after year, from a biker club in Massachusetts to the cross of Christ, where God gloriously saved both of them. Faithful members in our church, pillars in our church. Don't tell me this morning that God is not working. And don't tell me that New England is dead. God is on the throne. And he's going forward with the gospel work. What a great God we serve.